from Darkstar Astrology, bringing you Mars Retrograde, which will start on September the 9th. Now, it's already been in the shadow period. It started in July 25th. So you can see the whole of August has been pretty Mars retrograde-y, really. You know, Mars has been in Aries for an extremely long time, where it's very strong. You know, it's in the sign of its rulership. So that's why we've had such a heated summer, hotter than normal, and we've had the riots and everything else in America, and even in England we've had a statue being brought down as well. So it's not surprising. Now, what I'm going to do for this reading in the free half, the YouTube version, I'll have a look at Mars retrograde for all the signs, because people like that, it's popular. And then in the second half, I'm going to go into Mars retrograde and what it means for the US general election. We'll have a look at it in Donald Trump's and Joe Biden's chart, and in the American chart as well, because I think that's it's going to be very interesting, and that'll be the more juicy non-ad friendly part of the show. So I'll save that for the Patreons. If you want to become a patron, do come along to my Patreon account. The link will be in the description below, and from $5 a month you can have access to this and other recordings like my moons as well, the part 2s. So let's get on with just a little bit of a description of the Mars retrograde. Now, this planet turns retrograde every 2 years, and retrogrades in general work in a very right-brained, cyclical, intuitive way, rather than the direct linear mode that we tend to operate in just to get through our daily lives. So the planet's energy is turning itself upside down in a sense, so we get the opportunity to view things from another angle. Mars is traditionally a malefic, but it does not follow that when it goes retrograde it becomes even more malefic, nor does Mars become its opposite, a benefic. So what happens with Mars, well, it just becomes weird. Now, I tend to think of all planets when they go retrograde as going or becoming more like their higher octave, because I don't see retrogrades as being that bad, because really they're just slowed down. So, and when planets slow down, they're less personal and more transpersonal. It gives them more juice, more power, and it gives you more time to study in depth its energy. So instead of the usual flame-grilled Mars direct affair, Mars becomes really a rich, slow bake, and it very much depends on the sign that it finds itself in. So, you know, it's in Aries though, so that's not really slow or rich, but as slow and rich as it can be, really. So the Martian impulse will be slowed down, deepened, and I think will feel more plutonic. Now, some people say that it is also like the energy of Pallas Athena, the goddess. So with that, everything becomes very planned, very strategic, like a game of chess. And also it can be akin to Mars traveling in the 12th house, which makes him more of a spiritual warrior as well. So if one is going to wage war at all, it probably will be a psychic one. Now, Mars is also about sex as well as war, so it prompts us to re-evaluate our sexual relationships, and a new sexual attraction may burn out very quickly, while a fling with an old flame could turn into something unexpectedly long-term. So, you know, everything is turned upside down. Our ambitions and goals are bound to come under scrutiny as well. And it's said that those starting a war during Mars retrograde are likely to lose. Now, this is interesting in terms of the election, because, you know, whoever campaigns in a very aggressive way, I think is more likely to lose as well. And, you know, these riots and being very, I just think the side that seems to be more aggressive and rioting is going to be the ones that lose ultimately. So make of that what you will. Sometimes in personal terms, starting a war could mean summoning someone to court, or initiating a new business campaign against a rival. So in competitive cases like those, it's usually advised to wait until Mars is direct again before you start waging war on people. However, if someone should wage war on you, then it would be foolish not to defend yourself, and you're protected because you have to defend yourself. And I do think actually Mars retrograde has a very defensive quality to it. It's not proactive, but it is defensive. It's like martial arts, when if somebody attacks you, you take their energy and push back with it. So pushing back against the establishment, I think, would be fine. Like protests against the lockdown, for example. It's not like you've already been attacked. Your personal freedoms have been attacked. So I think that's fine. So anyway, let's see what it means for each sign, and then I will go into what this Mars retrograde is going to mean for all of us. So for Aries, while it's in your own sign, you'll get the opportunity to completely rebuild your persona bottom up. Events that happen will force you to completely reconstruct your personality or even your physical body, and it will become apparent that you cannot simply patch over the cracks and that some real deep down cleansing is needed. Mars is the destroyer, but also the healing scalpel of the surgeon that removes any toxic relationships or blockages in your body that are weighing you down or preventing flow. So at this time, you could find that such conflict builds up in your relationships that you lose patience with keeping up a false face to please people. The only way you can be now is authentic. And if you've not been keeping it real, the volcano action of the retrograde should clear out any toxic waste that you've been retaining. Now, this is a great period to be quite selfish and work on your physical body with exercise. Even though it is through vanity, you will still end up a healthier, fit body at the end of this retrograde, which can only be a good thing. So obviously Mars retrograde for Aries is going to be felt the strongest, and if you're reading this for your ascendant, definitely felt the more strongest because it is actually in your body. The first house is your body, so you'll be infused with Mars very strongly and acting more like Aries rising than you ever have done. I know it's retrograde, but I still think it makes it very intense. It's just intensified. So for Taurus, you actually get Mars retrograde in the most odd place, which is the 12th house. Very weird for Mars to hang out there because it's like a flame-breathing dragon suddenly finds itself 2,000 leagues under the sea. Any trumpets of fire will come out as bubbles, but those dragon wings will simply learn to swim pretty fast. This is a floaty, mystical time, and one where you might find out what spiritual values are worth fighting for. Mars retrograde in this Neptunian region has a Joan of Arc type of energy and is the spiritual warrior, which I mentioned earlier. And the much maligned 12th house is actually called the house of self-undoing because it really isn't a place that is conducive to material abundance. So this is the area of your chart where some self-flagellation happens to some extent in order to gain enlightenment. And you won't have to beat yourself senseless with a pointy stick, however. Instead, Mars will bring challenges to your life. And usually, though, it can be loss of some kind, where you will have to painfully let go of something that you've become addicted to. You might go through some cold turkey over drugs, alcohol, gluten, sugar, or even a person. So during this time, you will put yourself into rehab and be quite hermit-like. So meditation, yoga, martial arts are good, anything that brings a mind-body connection and space for restoration and healing. So just think of it as an extended time in the womb. So for Gemini, Mars retrograde is in the house of friendship. It could mean that you turn into a networking dynamo or have lots of niggly arguments with your friends. This will sort out the wheat from the chaff in terms of who are your true blood brothers or sisters and those who are just a bloody nuisance. During this time, you will be brutal in how much time you spend on social engagements. Anything that is draining or does not resonate with your soul will have to go. And that means clubs where you no longer fit in or friendships where you have simply grown apart. You know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to read the whole of these because otherwise it's going to make this very long, I've just realised. So I'm just going to read the first paragraph of these, and then you can just go to the website to read the rest of them. So yeah, sorry, rest of the horoscopes. I just think it's going to take so long, and it's going to take up a lot of this this podcast, and I don't want it to. So okay, on to Cancer. Mars revving backwards in your career house can be a double-edged sword. You get an extra boost of ambition here, but it can also make you unduly scheming or even ruthless. However, Mars retrograde can be useful in that you should be daring and pioneering in terms of pushing yourself out there in the world. It's always good to have courage. This transit is a lot easier to handle if you're self-employed, because you'll have the motivation to try new things without anyone holding you back. Leo, it's going to be in your house of beliefs and religion, and you could get extremely zealous at this time. Confrontation with other cultures and tolerance of their strange customs becomes an issue. In your hometown, you might have a valid point, but complaining that there's no tomato ketchup in the wilds of Tongo is another situation altogether. During this transit, you will find out just how adaptable your wild gypsy traveller side of you really is. This gives you a fantastic opportunity to reevaluate your beliefs and perhaps remove those elements that were mainly there through indoctrination as a child. Virgo, Mars retrograde will be in your 8th house, so prepare to start amputating any nightmare brain cells that have been messing with your psyche. You get to be your own psychologist as you become very well acquainted with the dungeons of your soul. I know that sounds dramatic, but Mars inverted, as I said earlier, has a real plutonic feel to it, and the 8th house is just plain creepy. So this experience is hardly going to be a summer stroll in the park. No, instead this transit will drag you through the woods backwards, kicking and screaming. Okay, I'm joking here, but it actually doesn't have to be that way at all. It could be more like Alice falling into a rabbit hole, because you are just so darn curious, and it will just get curious and more curiouser. The universe can speak to you in quite spooky ways, and it will feel quite supernatural. So for Libra, you've got it in your marriage house, and selfish Mars can find it tough retreating through that house of relationships, but what he will learn at the end of it all is compromise. Others will test your patience, that's for sure, but at the same time, you'll find it impossible to go it alone. One way or another, you will have to learn to grit your teeth and cooperate. Mars here means putting energy into dealings with others, and that includes business collaborations too. And you could find yourself going back over old ground with partners. Maybe old scores are settled or an enemy resurfaces. So for Scorpio, you have it in your house of health, the 6th house of service as well. And it can feel quite inflamed there. So you might get quite sweaty and have some strange rashes. But this doesn't have to be the case if you are open and honest with your feelings and don't keep your anger bottled up. Otherwise, this is where Mars will do its psychosomatic thing and show up as weird symptoms. Your body will speak to you in strange ways. Have a look at what nasty boil on chin means, and you will learn that every part of the body corresponds to a humour. No, it's not just for medieval doctors. So at this time, you could benefit from a good detox. So refresh your blood, stop it from boiling. Again, you don't have to get hold of some leeches, but foods that purify the blood, such as cabbage, lemon and garlic, can be very beneficial at this time. Mars rules the blood and iron, so check your iron levels are okay as well. So Sagittarius, woohoo, you have Mars in your zone of lovers, fun, leisure time and children. So Mars here is not going to start any wars or get silly and resentful, as it will be too busy bounding around with the dogs or abseiling down a cliff to be bothered with such petty squabbles. Make time then to take advantage of the enthusiastic and motivating energy of the red planet and go on an adventure. Of course, Mars will be going backwards, so there can be a certain amount of frustration here too. but not if you give Mars a free rein and just let it play. It just won't be taking its usual route, that's all. How can you be passive-aggressive while holding a multicoloured ice cream swirl smothered in hundreds and thousands? So for Capricorn, this will be in your 4th house of home, and you'll find there's a simmering volcano sitting behind the sofa in the living room. Well, that's what it will feel like with Mars retrograde in this domestic zone. Put a child lock over all those sharp objects and make sure the fire alarms are working. If you don't, then avoid lighting candles while under the influence of alcohol. Okay, so all the warnings are out of the way. You might actually find this transit quite exciting, for this is quite a sexy place for Mars to be, especially if you've just moved in with your beloved. It's the kind of transit where you will be furiously decorating and putting a lot of energy into your love nest. In fact, this is probably the best way to use this position. Knock out walls, paint walls in warm glowing colours, install an antique fireplace, and yes, damn it, light the dinner candles. You will have an extended time of Mars ambition, aggression, and focus in your most private zone of your chart. So Aquarius, it's in your 3rd house, so it's book burning time. This means that ways of thinking that are holding you back and are negative have got to go. So this means giving your brain a total reboot. Turn everything on its head by listening to media that is quite the opposite of what you usually take in. Oh God, that means I've got to read The Guardian. Anyway, purposely seek those who think the complete opposite of you so you can have interesting debates. That way you can test out whether your own opinions can stand up to interrogation. This period can get you into trouble online, but it also will help stimulate your synapses into researching information to back up your argument. And finally, Pisces, it's in your 2nd house. So if you've been holding on to too many useless possessions, Mars retrograde will do a great job of nuking all those dust-gathering knickknacks that you have lying around your home. Take this opportunity to go through your belongings and see whether you really need them. A good clear out will revitalise your energy and create space for new energy to come in. If you stubbornly hold on to vast hordes of junk, Mars might decide to erupt in the form of a house fire. Don't worry, this is really rare, so don't panic. It's just me being dramatic. Symbolically, this is a very apt image, though, for what Mars wants to do to stuff that needs recycling. Literally, this is Phoenix from the Flames energy. So with that out of the way, we can get back to Mars retrograde in Aries. Now, as I said, Mars retrograde is already quite Scorpionic, quite Plutonic rather, when it's retrograde. But now, so I think that kind of makes it almost like Mars in Scorpio as well. So very cunning and having to play like really 7-dimensional chess. So to have this during 2020 and also during the election, you could just, did they choose it? And I guess they couldn't because it's just the way it is, the setup. So, as I said, Mars has been in its shadow since the 25th of July. And I think that will give us an idea already how it's going to play out because it's going to really be more of the same. It could, I know there's been a lot of tensions in the USA, but it could actually subdue it a bit, hopefully. But at the same time, I do think there's too much frustration from the CV situation, the beer virus, brewing for that to be the cause. So, I don't know whether it will subdue it that much, but we'll see. Another possibility is that the wise will hold back and let the impulsive ones hang themselves with their own rope, so to speak. So those who plan for the long term will win. So this is about people who are very strategic and are able to defer gratification. And this is one of the traits of Saturnian type people. They are able to, they always think about winter's coming. And it's not, people will accuse them of being very negative and it's like, oh, can't it be eternal summer party time? But no, we know that winter comes and you have to save things for that winter. You have to conserve. That's the trait of conservatism. So, so they will do well under this Mars retrograde, and I do think we will see. I mean, one of the traits of narcissists as well is that they want everything now as well. So I think the narcissists will do quite badly during this Mars retrograde. So I think I'm going to leave it there for the free version. And there is a little bit more on the website that I'm going to go into in part 2. There's more describing the aspects that it's going to make with the learning triangle. And also a very important date is September the 28th. So there's a chart for that. So that's quite a big deal. So hop over to there or come to Patreon, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.